Hey guys, probably put this video on our Myths About Japan playlist because it sort of is a myth now. It might not be a myth 50 years in the future, but for now it's still a myth. So just before we get into it, the field that's yellow is ready to be harvested, so they'll probably come along and do that soon. They're really busy because the sun's shining, it's all dry. Lots of the fields are ready for harvesting, so the harvesters are out going really hard at the moment. Someone asked recently if the farmers own their own harvesters. Some of them do, but a lot of them are contracted. They get contractors to come in and harvest for them, so it's a mixture. So the yellow one there, that's ready to be harvested, and this little one here was harvested some time ago, and then what's happening is the stalks that have been cut off have started to grow again, but they won't go anywhere. They'll do that for a little while, but it's starting to get cool now, so they'll just stay like that basically. They won't grow any rice out of that. But that other one, that's ready to go. And there's a couple of big birds walking around here that we call, they're known as birdies. You might see some of them turn up at some time too, and other birds and butterflies and things. So anyway, let's get to the point. Paperless. You hear this a lot in Japan at the moment. Paperless. Paperless. So the plan is to try and make Japan paperless so that we stop using so much paper, which is just amazing when you've got a country that probably uses more paper than any other country in the world as far as bureaucracy and that sort of thing. So for them to have that goal to be paperless is pretty amazing. I mean, it's a good thing, obviously. It's a good goal to have, but it's so extreme. To go from being one of the countries of the world that uses the most paper and bureaucracy to one of the ones that uses none is a fairly ambitious goal. So first of all, we have seen examples of it. There's been a couple of times where we've had some bureaucratic thing to do that in the past has required a hanko, a stamp. And there's been a couple of examples recently where we've had to do something with City Hall. Actually, it was our tax thing, that's what it was, when we had to submit our tax papers. And I took my hanko because I expected I'd have to use it, and the guy that does our accounting said, no, you don't need that now, we don't need that now, you can just fill out the form and send it in. So there's still the same amount of paper, by the way, but don't need the hanko. So slowly, there's two points to this. One is they want to do out the paper, and then sort of connected to that, they want to do out the hanko thing, because the stamp thing is just ridiculous. You've got to do it on everything, you know. So there has been examples where we've seen where they've used a little bit less paper than usual and haven't needed the stamp. However, mostly we're still seeing the same sort of overly bureaucratic multiple pieces of paper things. So what triggered this video was today we had a problem with our gas heater recently that heats our hot water. And so I called the company and asked if they could come and have a look at it, right? So the guy turns up, and the first thing he does is, the first thing he does is look at it. And then he had a piece of paper that said, and they told us on the phone how much it was going to be for him to come. And Niman yen, by the way, so 20,000 yen, that's about $200. So I was like, what? You know, and yeah, because we have to look at what the problem is, but also it's due for a service, so they've got a maintenance and they've got to check everything. So it's 20,000 yen. So he's turned up and he's looked at it and found the problem, and it was sort of good news actually because it was easy to fix. But we still had to pay him $200, right, for his 15 minutes. So he produces a piece of paper, and we hanko it, we put our stamp on it, boom, and then he keeps that one and he gives us a copy, right? There's two pieces of paper there. And then we know from what happened last time, and he said, what's going to happen now is they'll send you the invoice. So that piece of paper was just acknowledging that it's going to be 20,000 yen. Then they send you another piece of paper that's actually the invoice, and plus an envelope, and plus a copy of the invoice. Plus usually some random brochures explaining other things about your gas system, you know. And so today we hankoed one, he kept that, he gave us a copy, and then over the next few days a big envelope will come full of paper, and one of them will be the invoice that we have to hanko and put in their return envelope and send back to them, and keep our copy, or which we usually throw away, and then there'll be some other brochures and other stuff in there too that we throw away. right? And that's normal. And then we pay with bank transfer, right? So so that's just a classic example. That's just a classic example of unnecessary paper. You know, copies and copies and hunkos and hunkos and it's just unnecessary. We know he did the work. We already acknowledged that when he came. We hunkoed one piece of paper. You know, they could make that the invoice, and then we could just pay by bank transfer. But no, they've got to send another piece of paper. We've got to hunko that, send it back to them, keep the copy. Then we got to pay by bank transfer, and then they, you know, it's ridiculous. And there was another one came this week too. Actually, two. Just another one just came to my mind. The vaccine thing. They sent us the paper to say that sent me a paper and said that I can go and get my 4th vaccination shot, right? And it was just this big, thick envelope like this, and you know, big piece of paper saying, you know, that you that if you want to, you're due for your 4th vaccination, for your booster, and big explanation about it, how it's includes the new variants of COVID and all that sort of stuff. And then another page that was 4 pages of my health details that I already filled out the last 3 times, right? So every time you go to get one of these vaccinations, you've got it's one fold out paper, like 2 A4s with printed on both sides. So it's 4 pages. And you've got to fill out, it's all your health information that you've already done 3 times, right? Because every time you go and get a vaccination, you've got to fill out this big form about your medical history. So we've already done that 3 times, got to do that again. And then, of course, there's another piece of paper with a list of all the clinics that you can go, and another piece of paper with some other explanation about different things, and a brochure, health brochure, general health brochure, right? So a big envelope full of paper like this, and that's exactly the same that they sent us the last 3 times. So I got one, and then the reason I'm saying us is my wife got one too. So 2 days before. So we got these big piles of envelope. All we need to keep is that health paper that we've already filled out 3 times already, and all the rest gets thrown in the rubbish. So we throw it in the paper recycling, but you know, nevertheless, it's wasteful, isn't it? So I'd forgotten that one. The 2 I was going to tell you about was the gas heater one and the my number. So I told you guys about the my number some time ago. They brought the system in a few years ago. It's similar. In some countries they call it social security card or social security number. In some countries they call it a tax file number. So it's basically that number, that big long number that they give everybody so that they can use it to identify them for tax purposes and for medical health care and for all that sort of stuff. So their plan is that they're going to use the My Number card for tax and for everything. So at the moment we all have a healthcare card as well, like a health insurance card, government issued health insurance card. So their plan is to do away with that, and we'll just use the My Number card for health, which in itself is a good idea. But what they did was they've decided that they want to have, so they already rolled out the My Number card thing a few years ago. Now that involved lots of paper as well. Lots of paper came, you had to fill it out, you had to send it back, more paper came, you know, lots of faffing. So we already did all that, and now they've decided they want to put photos on the My Number card, right? So we're basically going through the same process again. So this big thick envelope turned up, one for me, and then a couple of days later, one for my wife, and big thick envelope, and it had this big piece of paper and all the same thing, brochures explaining this and brochures explaining that, and paper and more paper and more paper, and then this form that you had to fill out with all your information on it, and then a passport size photo to put on there. And then they had an envelope in there that you could send it all back. So they send it all back to the government, and then they process it. And then another piece of paper turned up, a card, like a postcard turned up in the mail, and it said that your My Number card. So it's all in Japanese, right? Except My Number. So anata no My Number card dekimashita, right? So we've made your My Number card. So you need to phone this number and make an appointment, right, to come and get it, which is absolutely amazing. I mean, this little area around here is out pretty rural, as you can see, but there's still 50,000 people live here. So every adult, no, actually everybody, kids too, everybody gets a My Number card. So 50,000 people have to ring up City Hall and make an appointment to go pick up their My Number card. You know, what a mess. You'd think, seeing as they've already been dealing with us to get it done, that they just send it by certified mail to our house, right? It's got our picture on it. Would be more logical, wouldn't it? But no, more paper and more faffing and more going there. So yeah, look, we respect the goal of becoming paperless, you know, and we think it's obviously it's going to be good for the environment to do that, but they're so far from doing it. You know, they're just so far. You might remember we actually talked about it when they first talked about paperless. We made a video about it at the time and talked about it, and just, you know, that they have good intentions often with these sorts of things. What just came to mind was before the Olympics, about when they first got the Olympics, so it would have been about 2015 or something, when they first found out they'd got the Olympics, the 2020 Olympics. The government said that we've got a goal to improve the level of English in Japan before the Olympics. And some of you might remember we had a good chuckle about that at the time too, and said, no, it's not going to happen. And it didn't. Nothing changed. You know, when they'd still compare countries by English ability, Japan always ranks really low. That hasn't changed. And that seems to be what happens. These old guys that run the place have these meetings and make these announcements about how they're going to do this and they're going to do that. And it's all very well intentioned, but they don't do anything. It doesn't sort of do anything to make it happen. You know what I mean? There's a lot of considering and talking about and having meetings about it and talking about it. But the reality is, you know, when you know what Japanese society is like, the reality of it is just so far. It's like the cashless thing. They're pushing all the time for the cashless thing, you know, because obviously it's better for the government if everything's traceable. But it's the same thing. This is a country that loves cash. So this cashless goal that they've got with all these incentives to try and get people to go cashless, it probably is working to a certain extent. We know some people who use credit cards for everything now because of the cashless thing, and also phone apps and things like that. But cashless, you know, no cash, can't see that coming. So, and the same with the paper thing. You know, it's okay. They can do it on a federal level. There's actually a guy, the minister of digital, or the digital minister or something, whose sort of field it is to digitalize Japan, you know. And so at a federal level, at a national level, they can do stuff like that. They can make some changes, you know, where you don't need to put a hunko on your tax return and things like that, and you can submit your tax return by the internet. There's some things like that they can do on a federal level, but on a small level, and private enterprise, you know, that's a private company, that gas company that we were talking about before. And then the city halls, you know, the city halls have all got their little systems, and they've been doing it that way forever, and they just, you know, change. As some of you who've watched our videos over the years will know, change happens here really slowly, and they don't like change. They don't trust change, you know, new systems or new ways. You know, the explanation always is that's how we've always done it, you know, and just hear that all the time. You know, we get that all the time with our English friendly directory, you know. Usually expat people who own businesses in Japan who we contact, oh, that's an interesting idea, haven't heard of that before, might try that. And they'll put their business on our directory, you know. Whereas Japanese business owners, they'll say, oh, haven't heard that before, haven't done that before. That's the end of it. That's the end of it. If you send them an email, and they'll either not answer, which is really common, or they'll say, oh, I haven't heard about that before, we'll think about it, and you never hear from them again. Because they've never done it. Usually that's the way it works. If they've never done it, they're never going to do it. That's the way they see it. Instead of, oh, let's give that a try and see how it goes. They don't do that. They go, oh, no, we don't do that. That's not what we do. As I was saying it to you, here's the other one, fax machines. Fax machines. Just about every house in Japan and every business has a fax machine. And I mean, this is pretty common knowledge. Lots of people know about this, but just ridiculous, you know. And we actually get junk mail on the fax machine. So you come home and there's reams of paper have come out of the fax machine because some company has sent you a bunch of junk mail, and there's 5 pages from this company with all this junk mail on it. Just total waste of paper. You know, talk about paperless. Let's do away with our fax machines, you know. But no, they love their fax machines, and you'll get companies all the time will say to you, "Can you fax that to us? You know, you need to hunko this form or you need to fill out this form and fax it to us. And they just assume everybody's got a fax machine, right? And of course there are apps now, we can use things online, can't we? Where our fax goes to our computer, we can do that, can't we? But of course they don't, because they haven't done that before, right? That's not what you do. You go to the electronics store and buy a big pile of paper and put it in your fax machine, don't you? And an ink cartridge. Some of you wouldn't have even seen an ink cartridge, some of you young folk, but an ink cartridge of ink, or a roll, you know that roll, that black roll of paper? What do you call that? Carbon paper or something? And put one of them in the fax machine, a big wad of paper in the fax machine, and just waste of paper, you know, junk mail. By the way, what I do with the junk mail is I write on it in pen in English, big black letters, no faxes, and I feed it back into the fax machine and send it back to them. So to try and discourage them from doing it again, because you know, just a waste of paper. If I want to buy something from their company, I'll contact them. There's no need to send me junk mail on my fax machine. Pretty rude, isn't it? Pretty rude. So are the phone calls that you get on weekends and at night too from companies like that. There's no rules about that in Japan. Anyway, I digress. Paperless. So yeah, let's call it a myth. Let's call it a myth at the moment. Paperless Japan myth. Maybe, you know, 20, 30, 40 years from now, maybe it'll be paperless in Japan. But until then, it's just a noble goal, a noble ambition that seems really, really unlikely to be picked up for all the reasons mentioned, plus thousands and thousands more reasons. Oh, receipts. Receipts. You go into any shop in Japan and buy anything, they'll give you a receipt. And they've got the new cash registers now that you drop the money in the cash register and it comes out and it automatically prints the receipt out. And I actually showed you in a previous video, it automatically prints the receipt out, and they actually have a little rubbish container right in front of the printer. So as it comes out, if you want the receipt, you can take it, and if you don't take it, when the next one comes out, yours falls into the rubbish. So it's basically just this printer is just filling up this rubbish thing of paper, and then they throw it away. And every convenience store in Japan is doing that, every customer. Now it doesn't matter what you buy. I mean, you know you bought it. It's in your hand as you're walking out. You go buy a bottle of water for 100 yen and you get a receipt for it. Doesn't matter what you buy. It's automatic. Get a receipt, get a receipt, get a receipt, get a receipt. So there's paper. How much paper is wasted every day in Japan just from receipts coming out of registers for whatever people buy? It's crazy, you know. And usually, too, they'll come out and it'll say 100 yen for the water that you just bought, but usually it's got some sort of promotion code on it as well, and a little bit of an advertisement about something, and then a QR code for promoting something, and a bonus point thing and something else. So you buy a little bottle of water and you might get a receipt that's twice as long as this from a convenience store. It's amazing. So anyway, that's more than enough of that. Did that big white bird fly past while we were talking? He was around here a moment ago. Anyway, it's all good. The paperless Japan myth. More videos coming soon.